coming back to school with me. We could have done it all so easily.
Hi, my name is Craig Thompson Wood. I'm the board game teacher. Thanks for coming to my games room. Today, I want to take a look at Monsterpocalypse by Privateer Press. So this right here is Monsterpocalypse, and this is a game which is based on kaiju monsters fighting over a city. Kaiju monsters are those giant things like Godzilla, King Kong. What you saw in the movies Pacific Rim were, well, they actually even referred to them big monsters as kaijus, and then they had these robots which they called the Jaegers. But in this game, all the big monsters, including the robotic ones, are called kaiju. And it's a game of high tactical decisions, moving around the city with your monsters, your kaiju, and your units, which are smaller things which come out at different spawn points in the board, and then they will move forward to support your monsters and help to win by taking down the enemy monsters. In the process, the buildings of the city are laid to waste. By the end, it looks like a real wasteland, but one side will emerge victorious. This is, I consider, my favorite game of all time. And one thing that I love so much about it is that it has so much to offer in terms of just giving more than just being a game. I have written many blogs, comics, so many things around this game. This game has inspired so much for me in terms of just going beyond, that I felt I would be remiss if I didn't include this on my channel, because of the opportunities that it has to really dig deep and go into some very methodical and careful planning about your armies and your monsters and how they work together, the probabilities, the mathematics, the everything. And then reading other people's blogs, there's just so much in there that it's just fantastic, and I love it for that reason, because I love to challenge myself and to constantly be growing and developing as a person, as a player, as a learner, but also because I just love kaiju so much. I've been a huge kaiju fan since I was a kid, and so this instantly struck a chord with me. But the fact that it just has such potential for so much more just really just makes this game sail over the top for me. Let me just start off by saying that this isn't a game that I'm going to be recommending for schools. Not in classroom settings anyway. I mean, if you're going to run this as an after-school club, then I think that would be fantastic. This would be a great setting for that kind of thing. And because as a teacher, then you could be really kind of moving those kids and motivating them to do the blogging, do the research and things to improve as players in the game, show them how to do that, and set them up with the templates of things, of different blog series and things to examine the monsters and the units and things and discuss why they think different things work well together. Like I said, a lot of great potential there. But what I want to do is just sort of talk a little bit about the game in terms of what you can do with it and how you can encourage learning from it, so that if you want to play this at home yourself or encourage your kids to play, this game has a lot of great potential in it. Now, if you're going to be running this as a club at school, the models are quite expensive. I don't know, I haven't contacted Privateer Press in terms of any sort of support recently. I'll get to that in a little bit, but they might be willing to donate some things. Otherwise, you would probably be requiring the kids to bring their own models. There is other ways to work around this too, which I'll talk about later. I know as a club it could work really well, because a few years ago I actually did this game as a course at a summer camp for gifted kids. It was called the Peel Summer Academy, and the students, I had a small group of, I think it was like 6 students, and they were coming to me on a daily basis for an hour every day for 2 weeks, and I was teaching them Monsterpocalypse. I was teaching them about the game, teaching them about the moves, teaching them about how to do different strategies, and we were still only scratching the surface at the end of those 2 weeks. They were just getting the hang of it at that time. If the Peel Summer Academy had continued the next year, I would have gone on to an advanced course, but sadly it didn't, and so that course ended after the first year. But I know that the kids who were there were absolutely fanatical about the game. The counselors of the camp were saying that was all that they would be talking about. This game is a wonderful, rich, deep game, and it's one I just can't recommend enough. Now for the blogs I had done, this was back in the times of the first edition of Monsterpocalypse. This is currently now the second edition of Monsterpocalypse. In the first edition, it was introduced to me by Team Covenant, which is a great website, great team of people doing a lot of different games. Sadly, they're not doing Monsterpocalypse anymore, but back in the first edition they were, and they'd done a series of blogs called the 31 Days of Mastering Monsterpocalypse, which led you through a series of blogs which would help you to understand and to improve with your monster by examining the strengths and weaknesses of your monster, what units it can take, buildings you would take for it, what map you'd take. There's a whole bunch of different decisions, and each one would be a blog to really dig deep into that and to figure out what would work for you. So I'm currently in the process of revamping that for this edition of Monsterpocalypse, and so those who are interested in the game, I can certainly put you to links on what I've come up with for figuring out the blogs for this new edition. And through the blogs, it also gives you opportunities to be creative in terms of how you're presenting your blogs. I know I wanted to try and push myself a little bit too. So I did the blog series 3 times actually, which was quite a bit of work, but I enjoyed it, so I was having fun doing it. The first blog series I did because I was just learning WordPress and I was learning how to blog, so I was just doing some basic blogging. Text, pictures, and that was kind of it. The second series of blogs I had a lot more fun with. I did it as a comic book. So here's an image of one of the comics I put up, and that was I did the whole series in that kind of fashion, and it was just a lot of fun to think about what I needed to do, but do it in such a fun way. And so in that way, I was also continue to push myself as a learner in presenting as a comic format and learning the Comic Life program that I used to create those comics. I've also considered doing things in a video series, and a friend and I even created a podcast called Monster Island, which we ran for a while, which was a lot of fun. So in many different ways as well, beyond just the game itself, but through the other things, I was learning a lot of technology just because I was pushing myself in different formats on how to express my learning and things through these different mediums. So if you're a fan of chess or maybe run a chess club at school, I know that the Monsterpocalypse community has had a number of people in it who were avid chess players and have likened the Monsterpocalypse to chess. And that's because the game you can see is run on grids here. So everything has movements which it's not that they have to move in particular directions, but the fact that you can count things out means that there are limitations to what your opening moves can be. Besides being limited to your monsters, to your units and things, there's a staggering amount of different variables that you could be looking at, but they're still going to come down to opening moves and finishing moves and ways that you react to different things. The deep strategies that you get into in this game are really what separates the good players from the great players. And I never was admitted to be a great player, but I was getting better through the blogs that I was doing and really appreciating the depths of the strategies that are within it. Yes, the game does use dice, but luck can be mitigated by the dice by knowing and understanding the probabilities that each one has. You have 3 different colors of dice, the white, the blue, and the red, and the white are your worst ones, blue are better, and the red are the best ones, which you have to earn through different attacks and destroying buildings, destroying units and such on the board. But it's understanding your probabilities and things and mitigating and how willing are you to push your luck that, again, separates the good players from the great players. But sometimes, being a dice game, even a 99.7% chance can fail, and I've seen it happen. So those are the kinds of things that you have to be prepared for in the game, but understanding those probabilities and understanding how to mitigate them and to set yourself up for what ifs is, again, one of those things that separates the good from the great players. Now, in looking at this game and knowing the complexity levels and the depth and everything like that, you may think that this is a game strictly for older kids. That's not so. I've actually seen a number of people on the Facebook forums and different posts I've read about Monsterpocalypse that they're playing with some very young children. Young kids are immediately drawn to the game because of the visuals of it. I mean, these giant monsters and things. Now, would I recommend giving these kids an expensive resin figure to play with? No. They're just as likely to pick them up and pew, pew, pew and start banging them against each other as kids are wont to do. But what I have seen people doing is finding cheaper, like Transformers, GoBots, or whatever to represent the different models. They can still play the game, but have some stand-in models for kids that are not as expensive and more durable because they're made out of a cheaper plastic rather than the expensive resin. So there's that potential as well. So it's the kind of game that you can introduce to kids, and there's ways to simplify and to maybe introduce the rules to them a bit at a time. But they're certainly going to be drawn to it. I wouldn't necessarily say don't include the young ones because it's too complicated. I say let them try it, and maybe introduce it a bit at a time. You as the parent know what you think they can handle, not handle, and just kind of guide them through it. But it's a wonderful game, and I think that it's one that I as I say, can't recommend highly enough. And another thing that you have within the game is the opportunity to do painting. So these models that you see on the board here are ones that I've painted. So I've painted all these models. Now these ones here are cardboard that come with the base game itself. So in the base game, you're going to get one monster, like Defender X. You'll get 6 cardboard buildings, and then you'll get a few units. Now, as you go on, you want to expand, you can buy more monsters, you can buy resin buildings that you can then paint, and you can increase and add to your collection that way, and build a full proper force. So a proper force would be 2 monsters, 20 units, and then you can have a variety of maps and things. So that's all things you can add to as well, and then you can painting becomes part of the fun, and maybe even doing some converting and things like that. So there's that artistic creativity as well. The game just keeps giving. There's just so much that you can do with this. So if there's anybody at Privateer Press that would like to speak about that, like if there's any opportunities for people who are at schools or camps or those kinds of things that can maybe talk to, is there some kind of support for clubs? Will you be able to provide miniatures and things for them? I know when I did the Peel Summer Academy that I did get a few, like 1 monster for each kid, and so that was great because then they were able to learn that monster, take it home with them, and it just was that kind of start to get them hooked and get them going. And I'm wondering if Privateer Press has anything that they can offer for something like that to clubs that want to get started at schools. If Privateer Press can give me a shout in the comment section below, maybe I'll actually reach out to them as well, and I'll put some information down there if I'm able to get that. But otherwise, if you have any other questions about this game, leave me a message in the comment section below. But that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. If you have any questions about Monsterpocalypse, or if you have any other suggestions for games you might like to see on the channel, or if you have any other ideas for topics you might like me to discuss, please leave me a message in the comment section below. I may reach out to Privateer Press myself as well to find out if they have any support available for clubs and after-school programs, things like that. And if I find out anything, I'll leave that message in the comment section below. Well, until next time, I'm Craig Thompson with the Board Game Kaiju, saying thanks for coming to my city.
Are you coming back to school?